What's going on, everybody? It's your host, Jay, here of the Young Dad Podcast, and I have a very special episode coming up right after this little message from me. I had the wonderful opportunity going on the Mediocre Dad Podcast with my man Q, who you've heard on the Young Dad Podcast feed already, with episode 4, The Patriarchy Principle. And it was such a great opportunity to go on his podcast and to be able to talk about so many amazing things, from just having a heartfelt conversation to the importance of being present as a father, the value of education, the impact of mental health on parenting. Our conversation also explored the military as a viable option for young adults, unsure about their future, and the significance of father-son relationships and personal growth, as well as father-daughter relationships, with that relationship with the father as being so key and integral to all that. I also got to share my experiences with my father, with my dad as well, and the lessons I've learned about kindness, resiliency, and culminating and in expressing love towards my father and about my dad. And honestly, it was just a vulnerable conversation. It was a fun conversation. It was an engaging conversation. And so I'm going to let Q take it away right now. So then reached out, started talking. I'm pretty sure I cussed him out. I got after him, said all the things. His response was to send 14-year-old me the copy of the court papers, all the court documents from the custody hearing. And I found a lot of things in there that I was unaware of, that I didn't know about. A lot of time that I was supposed to be spending with him that I didn't. A lot of birthday cards that were returned to sender. A lot of letters that were returned to sender. A lot of invitations to go on trips, have experiences, things like that. Never got answered.
All right, guys. Hey, welcome to another episode of Mediocre Dad's Podcast, where being mediocre is a choice. You have to refuse to be mediocre every single day. I'm your host, Quan. I go by Q. And on this episode, I am joined by an awesome guest. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I think all my guests are awesome. But there are a select few who I have spoken to that I will tell you that right off the bat, I'm like, no, this person's awesome, because the conversation is really easy. It flows, and in a relationship style way, it makes sense. You know what I mean? It's love at first sight. It makes sense. It's great. I was on his show, and the episode is not out yet, but I was on his show. We recorded the episode. Phenomenal conversation. And the whole time I was thinking, like, oh my goodness, me and this guy could probably talk for hours. It was phenomenal. But guys, without further ado, I'm going to introduce you. His name's Jay. He's the host of the Young Dad Podcast. Is it Young Dad? I think it is. Is that right? Yeah, the Young Dad Podcast. Phenomenal podcast. Highly encourage you guys to check it out. Not only because I hold a future episode on there, but because I think it's awesome anyway. Any dad that has a podcast that I have been on, or that they lead and they take the charge on, it's amazing because they're willing to have the conversations that I think are important and essential. And they add their own flavor to it, and it's beautiful, right? We all have similar conversations, but we add our own flavor, our own spin to it. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I love the title. I'm not gonna lie. I saw your podcast, the Young Dad Podcast. I was like, I like that title. Simple, straight to the point. A little jealous because I went up my way. My approach for naming my podcast was a little like I want something witty. I want something kind of like, and I came to the Mediocre Dads, but it's awesome. But I love your the name of your podcast and your logo. I think it's pretty awesome. So, but anyway, enough of me kind of bantering here. Jay, real quick, can you just introduce yourself to the audience and kind of tell us a little bit about yourself?
Of course. Well, first off, I'm very flattered. Very, very flattered. Of course, flattery always gets you points. So shout out to you for that one. Yes, we did do a recent collaboration that is going to be coming out on, give me 1 second here. So it's actually going to air twice on the Young Dad Podcast feed. Fun fact. So it's actually going to be a new addition to the Young Dad Podcast feed. It's called Patriarchy Principles. It's going to be episode 4 of Patriarchy Principles, which is going to come out on October 23rd. And then it's going to come out again as episode 179 on November 18th. So super excited.
Awesome.
For those 2 episodes that come out under both formats. They'll reach a lot of the same audience, but they'll reach different audiences at the same time. And so, yeah, I'm Jay. I am a master's level mental health clinician, let's see, what else? I have 2 kids, a girl dad, through and through, hence the hat. If that makes sense, if you're watching on the YouTube machine or the Rumble machine or wherever you get your video podcast from, wherever you're watching it. So it's all there. Let's see. Divorced, remarried. Important part of the story. I was raised by my grandma. Didn't live with my dad until I was in high school. Lived in a bunch of different states, Washington to Hawaii to California to Idaho for college to Arizona for a bit, and then back up to Washington. So I've been around the block a time or two, around biracial as well. Another exciting addition to the Young Dad podcast feed, as well as a biracial broadcast that me and my dad are putting together. So that's going to be super fun. It's going to be a really cool time on that one. We get to talk about being biracial and kind of how our world's been affected by that. And we're going to dive into a whole bunch of areas of different things, race discrimination, bias, all the different things are going to be on there. Politics, how race and politics and all the things intertwine and collide and things like that. So yeah, I do a bunch of different things, and have a lot of fun doing all of them.
That's phenomenal. That's awesome. I'm not gonna lie. When I went on your show, I didn't know a lot of that about you until you just said it here. So, I think I want to hit a few points, especially what you just said. Yeah, guys, we're gonna dive right into it. You know me, you know us here at the Mediocre Dads podcast. You know what we do. So, diving right in. For one of the first things you said was you're a mental health clinician.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yep.
What is?
I'm a master's level mental health clinician.
What does that mean exactly? I guess is that a fancy way of saying you're a counselor or
pretty much, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
I don't want to downplay what you do.
Right. Yeah. So there's different avenues of mental health and to be a clinician in the field. Some people call them social counselors. I do some counseling, but I'm a clinician because I do multiple different roles within my agency. So I view myself more as a clinician than a counselor or therapist or anything like that. I'm a clinician. That's how I differentiate myself. I hold a master's degree, so that's my credentialing, my backing there. So
that's awesome. I asked that because as a person myself who is starting my master's degree in counseling, I always find it pretty awesome when I'm talking to other people. I'm like, oh, you know that? That's pretty awesome. I didn't know that. So I was just curious in that regards. Selfish plug, guys. I just wanted to know more because, selfishly, I'm over here still making sure I'm on the right path, So.
Yeah, no, there's so many options out there, and one thing I recently talked about, I was a guest on the Different Spectrums podcast, and we dove into that and a little bit about my schooling and everything. And, it took me up until a few years ago to get my bachelor's. Like I was in my mid to late 20s when I got my bachelor's a few years ago. So we dove into that, and then I've been pursuing my master's and got my master's in developmental psychology. So it's really cool. Like everyone's path is a little bit different. But whatever path you're on, like definitely stay on that path. Education is super important, and it's a great example for your kids. Now, you may not want your kids to go to college. I heard some really interesting statistics about college professors today that kind of had me rethinking, yes, my kids are quite a ways away from college, but it really had me thinking of the professors and the staff that are running our colleges may not align like values-wise with me. And so there are alternatives coming out. There's an online college program that's an alternative to traditional college. That's really cool. I forget who that's run by. It's one of the big name like conservatives. I can't remember who, but yeah, really cool stuff. But definitely stay on your path. So
yeah, no, it's crazy. I'm not a big fan of the college degree, and what I mean by that is, while I think there is some value to it if you're pursuing a degree or you're pursuing such as an expertise, such as to be a doctor, a nurse, a lawyer, one of those key specialties that I think all societies need or that and are essential. Great, but there are a lot of degree programs out there that I'm like, or even counseling or social work, right? I think those are important degrees. I'm not going to sit here and name every single one of them because I don't know every single one of them. But I do know there are several that come to mind that I think are a complete waste of time. That I'm just like, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't hold any value, or it doesn't hold the value. It's weighted the same as if a person gets a bachelor's in liberal arts or in business management, right? No one sits there and says your degree is over this person's degree. It just says like, cool, you both got a degree, congratulations. when and it's just kind of like, what was the purpose? If the person who went for business management had a harder time in college versus the person who went for liberal arts, which, do you pursue the degree you want to pursue? It's just, to me, it's just kind of like they're weighted the same, but obviously there was someone who was working harder than the other. And I use those two degrees as an example because my bachelor's is in liberal arts. However, my first bachelor's was in business administration. I'm only 4 classes away from finishing that bachelor's, but I'm not going to get into that. So like I use those examples because that's just kind of personally for me and where it was at. So college can be important, but I do think we need to get back to the importance of what higher education is supposed to be. And it's not, it's just used as a platform for, overpaid college professors to spout their views and their beliefs into young minds and claim that it's for higher education and for them, this is what they're supposed to do when they get here. So I am not
impressionable young minds at that, all those young minds are very impressionable. And so it's not so much like you said, like those are 2 great examples, but what's the plan for when you have it, right? What's your plan for when you get those degrees? Because with a business management degree, you can do a whole hell of a lot more than you can with a liberal arts degree.
100%.
And they should not at all be weighted the same because one is significantly harder than the other. And so getting your business management degree shows that you are at an entry-level business management position to go in and help run a business, to add value to a business. But if you take a big business, let's say Walmart, right? And you have a business management degree and you go to work for Walmart corporate, you're going to be a lot better off than the person who has a liberal arts degree because you're going to understand the ebbs, the flows, the economics, all the things that come with a business, the business side of it, where the liberal arts persons essentially could be set up as a disadvantage for life because they don't have those practical skills. They don't have the money, the understanding of socioeconomics, economics, stock market, things like that, all the things that you would learn. They don't know how to use spreadsheets. They don't know how to use Word or PowerPoint to be able to get a point across quickly, talk to people, things like that. So there's a lot of advantages and disadvantages to different degrees, but I 100% agree. Like our college system is broken. It's a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, to an extent, for how many different degrees there are, a lot of it's agenda based. I mean, they all get their funding from the same place. So, there's that. And so it's sad to see. And I think we talked about this on our show about the Department of Education, how it was just a joke. And 100%. So it's the same with the college level, but it's more about what you're going to do. I really strongly feel like college really needs to be rethunk and how you can go about that. And every degree needs to lead to a career. Like it needs to lead to some kind of career. There should be no wasted time. Like you can waste your time for 2 years in general studies, but after those 2 years, you either have to decide or bounce, kind of thing. And then you're committing to a path, whether you're going to be a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer or a scientist or something, but it has to be something that produces and adds value to the society as a whole. It can't just be more protests and group gatherings and a place for that. It has to actually be a place for learning that's going to be producing productive members of society, because it's not that. It's producing people who are thought for and people who are not individuals anymore, who are subscribed to this agenda and to these ideas that really aren't theirs or the ideas that they were raised with. And they're confused and they're all over the place. They have no purpose and they're taking mom and dad to job interviews with them and doing all these crazy things. And it's wild. So,
yeah. And it was crazy because to kind of add to what you were saying is these young kids who are what you mentioned are very impressionable. It is for the first time they're having their value. For some of them, they're having their values questioned. Their values and their beliefs are being questioned for the first time, and they don't know how to respond because their parents, and parents, this is on you, dads especially, you didn't actually teach your kids why those values and why you held those values and beliefs. You just told them to hold those values and beliefs. So now they're on a college campus, for lack of better terms, alone and afraid. And they're trying to, navigate this new realm and new world that they're in. And they have all these new kids that are young kids, that adolescents they're introduced to as well, who come from different areas and different walks of life, who are introducing their beliefs and their values, and they're saying, well, why don't I believe in that? Why? I've never questioned why I believe in God, or I just believed in God because my parents always told me God is the forefront, God is number one in our life. I never actually understood or questioned them why we believe that. I just followed it, and now I'm in a place in which I'm always being questioned, and I don't know the answer. And so now you start thinking, well, maybe my parents were wrong, and maybe they were wrong in this, and maybe they're wrong in that. And it just leads down a rabbit hole to where we are with now, where you have these young kids who are at these college campuses to go to school for 4 to 5 years, going over $100,000 in debt, and they have nothing to show for it. And then they leave their echo chambers that is called college, and they go out to attempt to go out into the workforce. And the workforce is like, you don't bring any value to my company, so I can't hire you. You don't have anything that you can bring value to. You don't have any internship. You don't have an internship. You don't have something to show me that your foundational knowledge, your education actually taught you and led you to do something in this workplace or in society, right? And so, because you wasted your time, I'm sorry, doing other things that maybe you should have been applying yourself in other areas. Which leads me to my next question for you. So, my guests know, all the fans of Mediocre Dads, they know I am active duty military, and I joined the military when I was 19 years old, and I've been in it since then. So I'm going on 11 years in November, and it's been a huge part of my life. It's impacted, it's changed me it's allowed me to become the man that I am today. And I love the Army for that. I do. But what are your thoughts on your kids joining the military if they're not necessarily in that right place after high school to say, I don't know what it is I want to go to school for. I don't know if I want to get into, I'll go to a vocational school. Would you recommend the military, or do you think that, maybe you should hey, go do something else? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. No, well, first off, thank you for your service, as I said on our show as well.
Yes, thank you for support.
Shout out to all our active duty and retired and those who are getting deployed overseas. 40,000 troops just got deployed to the Middle East today. It's September 24th, so 40,000 troops are being sent to the Middle East, to where the conflict is going on over there. Absolutely no reason that we should have more American troops in the region. If you paid attention to the last presidential debate, it was a lie when there was told there was no active duty military in active war zones. That was an absolute lie, an absolute scam. And yet she wanted to call the other person a liar. And so there's that, first and foremost. So my heart goes out to those families because they're just being sent over almost as a sacrifice for no reason. Yeah. Israel can defend itself. Israel has the power. Israel has the capability to defend itself, and it should. I fully stand that Israel should stand with itself, and we have been sold an agenda that Palestine and Gaza and all these things. But that's a totally different issue than the question. But yes, I would 100% support my daughters if they didn't want to go to traditional school. If they felt like a trade was more up their alley, great. Electrician, construction, whatever that trade is, maybe it's becoming an EMT. Yeah. Those are all different trades. Being an EMT is a trade, becoming a firefighter, police officer, those are trades, those are needed. I would probably try to talk them out of the whole police officer thing. But, firefighters, EMT, go into nursing if they're unsure. That's a great field. Very stable career. There's always going to be a need. And same for trades. Trades will always be needed if that's what they feel like they want to go and do and explore. But if they feel like the military is an option for them, yes, I would have loved to have been able to serve in the military. I was never able to. My grandfathers all served. I thought that would have been really cool, but I was unable to for medical reasons. Would have never gotten clearance to enter or enlist. So something I really wish I could have, but happenstance as is. I was blessed to have my children at 22. So one of my oldest daughter at 22. So, there's some really cool things that come from not taking that path of military and whatnot, for myself. And it just, what was meant to happen, happened. So, but if they felt military was for them, and then it becomes a conversation. Okay, well, what branch are we wanting to think? And that's when, for myself as a father, I need to go and find, okay, I need to go hit up Q because he can talk to her about the Army. I need to go hit up so-and-so because he can talk about the Navy. I need to go hit so-and-so because they're a SEAL. I need to go hit so-and-so because they're a Marine. I need to go hit up so-and-so because they're in the Air Force. I need to go hit so-and-so about the National Guard. I need to go hit up so and so about all the different branches, right? I need to go hit up someone about so and so from all the different branches, because that's my job as a father, to make sure that they get to have those conversations, so they know what their options are and what that looks like. Because each branch is totally different. Yes, they're all military services, but each one serves a different purpose.
Yeah.
Each one does different things, and what you can do with those different branches of the Army or branches of our armed services, can really set you up on a totally different life trajectory from one versus another. Because there's different jobs, there's different functions, there's different things you can do within each of those. And then, fun fact: if you go into the military and you serve out your first contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
At least, then you qualify for the GI Bill, and then you can go to school. You'll be 22, 23 years old, and then you can go to school. You'll have a foundation. You'll be grounded. You'll have skills that are going to be invaluable to a college environment, especially them being girls. If they go to the military for 4 years and then they come out and then they go to college, ain't no one gonna F with them at all. They're gonna be these slick back ponytails. They're gonna be some badasses walking around that campus. So yeah, go ahead. If that's their choice, then I'm gonna make sure that they have the tools. Because I think we mentioned it back on our conversation too, or at least I mentioned it, how things used to be back in the post Great Depression era, 50s, things like that, where fathers were the ones taking, particularly their sons, if they wanted to go and be a blacksmith when they came of age to go and do that, then they would go and oversee their training. They would go and oversee them wanting to become a blacksmith or a doctor or a lawyer, and they would get them connected to the right people who could help them the most. And they would oversee that process. So that's our duty as fathers, is to oversee this process for our kids, whatever it might be. If it's college, great. We're going to start planning early for that, because we got to start planning early for that. But I know people. I got people. I got 2 or 3 college counselors that I could recommend. Just people I've talked to on the podcast. No problem. We'll figure that part out. You want to go trade school? Great. Let's take you down to the union over here. Let's take you down to that union. Let's take you down to that union so you can go get some information. Because those people don't come to the schools, right?
Yeah.
They don't bring those people into the schools, which is an absolute shame that they don't bring more military, police officers, firefighters, and all the trades and things like that into schools to talk to these kids, to totally tell them their options. Because what the school system is, it's set up to funnel them into colleges where they can just become, and I'm sorry to say it, where they're going to become left-wing voters.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be thought for, and they're going to be agenda-based, and they're going to come home and cause all this problem and chaos during Thanksgiving because they lost their values, they lost their moral compass, because they finally don't have any. And it all trickles back down to something. So that's kind of my take on it, to answer your question in a very roundabout way.
No, I appreciate it. And it's beautiful because it's a lot of what you said, I 100% agree with. And I think that, and this might sound like I'm going back for what we were just talking about as far as college goes, but one of my main things is critical thinking. And I love critical thinking, and I love to try to ask questions and that lead to critical thinking, to teach younger people how to critically think without them without me necessarily telling them, go, I need you to think critically, right? And what case, right? I want them to utilize, get the brains flowing and be like, oh, this is what critical thinking looks like. This is what applying this and going through this thought process, this is what that looks like. And so I think that is what these college, military, trade school, that's what these things, that's what part of what these places, this is part of what you should be learning when you go, whatever it is you choose, you're going to do. I love, I did a real quick selfish plug here for the military. But here's what I like about military, because I've learned so much, right? Especially for younger kids who are just graduating high school. And that is, okay, say you want to join the military, and you join the military and you do 4 or 5 years, and you're like, hey, I did the thing. I got a skill. In some form or way, you went to a trade school, right? Because you're leaving there with a skill, maybe even potentially a clearance, whatever branch you decide to join, and whatever you decide to do when you get in the military. But the beautiful part is, and what I tell people is, he's like, get the best of both worlds, right? So go to college, get yourself a degree, and it doesn't, again, and this part, this is essential, this is key right here. So if you have young teenagers high schools is a little rough for them right now, because they're not really focused, whatever the case might be, but they're getting into that realm of, hey, becoming adults and wanting to join the workforce, what that looks like. Get them into a college. You pay for their first year of college, right? You pay for their first year. That second year, they join the ROTC program if they can. They have to be eligible. It's similar to enlisting in the military like you would when you go to recruiter, but you join the ROTC program. You join the ROTC, and from when you join ROTC, they pay for the remaining years of your college. But you owe the military 4 or 5, I think it's 4 years, right? Let's just call it you owe the military 4 years.
It's like the same as like your first contract, right? That you would sign at 18 versus you get your degree.
Yep. And then you become an officer.
Once you graduated, then you go and, but wouldn't that also set the child up for like more military success? Because wouldn't they come in already having some kind of like formal ranking and understanding how it works and things like that? So they're already coming in as like a bit ahead of the curve too.
And yeah, in a way. So they'll come in. So they'll go through this training. They go through training. They have to take this course. It's added on to their core courses for whatever their degree is, which is military science, which is military history, and all military things, if you will. But mainly one of the main things that they're learning is military history, and about previous tacticians and tactics and whatever the case might be, right? And so they have that experience where they go to ROTC. They do ROTC for those 3 years. They have their summer program, which is basically their basic training. And then once they graduate, they have their pinning ceremony. And their pinning ceremony is when they pin on bars. They're officers at that point. So they enter the military as officers, and they get paid more. That's the biggest thing, guys. To get paid more. That's one. Number two.
So then, like the bonus, the signing bonus is going to be bigger too, then, right?
So they won't get a signing bonus because the military has paid for their degree.
That's a pretty good bonus.
Yeah, that's a pretty good bonus, right? So the military has paid for their degree in that regard, and so they owe the military at the time.
So that would be a bigger bonus, essentially, too, than what they would get if you were coming out at 18 years old.
You get the best of both worlds. Okay. You get the best of both worlds. Okay, you get the college degree, and you get to join the military, and so you get the higher education piece. Then you also get the practical side of things, where you're like, I joined the military. I have life experience. I have worldly experience, if you will, that I've applied. I used my education for, and I applied it to my military experience. And you leave there, and you're automatically more. What's the word I'm looking for? You're more wanted in the job market than the person such as myself, who just enlisted.
Yeah, because you have skills already. Yeah. Like you're more wanted in the job market because now coming out of, you're going to be 26 essentially, right? So now you're 26 and you have a bachelor's degree plus you have 4 years of military service. So that in itself looks so good on a resume. And I think the biggest misconception with a lot of people, a lot of parents when it comes to the military, is we all think like, oh, military means active duty. They're going to be getting shot at. They're going to be throwing bombs and nukes and all this stuff. Like that's not all that. Like the military has a lot of jobs, a lot of different things. Yes, combat is an option. Not everyone goes to combat. Not every job goes to a combat zone, right? And let's say like my daughters, they went and did that. So the first year paid for it. Then the next 3 years, let's say they study nursing or something. Guess what? They're going to go be a military nurse for the next 3 years, where they're probably, and this is my thinking, they could get deployed to a combat zone, depending on the escalation and whatnot. But also, they're probably just going to go and work at the hospital or the triage, or I'm not sure what it's called, but
you have a role 1, role 2, but yeah.
Yeah, they're going to be a military nurse, which is going to be something completely different. Like then, they're serving, but they're getting paid really well. And they're doing something they love. So then when they're done, now they have their 4-year degree, plus they just got 4 years of experience. So now when they go to that big hospital in their hometown or wherever they want to work, they get pick of the litter, right? For whatever nursing job they want. Because they already have 4 years versus the nurses who are 22 and 4 years younger than them. who are just barely got their degree and say, I want to be a nurse. It's like, no, we're going to take the one that has 4 years of military experience as a nurse, knows what she's doing. I don't have to teach her anything. And she's already trained and ready to go. We're going to pay her a lot of money, and she's going to be very valuable and super indispensable, which goes back to the whole idea. Like, we have to teach our kids, like, how to, it's not what it's not what their companies and who they work for can do for them, but it's like, what skills and what intangibles and what are they bringing to the workplace that makes them so valuable and indispensable that no matter what they do, well, of course, in extreme situations, but that they are so valuable to the company that they cannot afford to lose them because they're that valuable, because they bring all that value to their workplace and what they're doing.
That's it, right? That is it, right? I tell people all the time, the military is, while it is the thing that is for me, that's the path that God has directed me to be on, and that's the path that I'm following right now, and that's what I'll be on until He tells me it's time to jump ship. But that doesn't mean that everyone has to do what I did or what I'm doing or what those before me have done, whether they did the military for 20 plus years or 20 years and then they retired and whatever the case might be, right? Like, that is an option. That doesn't mean that's the only option. That doesn't mean you have to do that. And so I always tell people, is like, hey, you need to do what's best for you. However, when we're sitting in an economy right now that's highly inflated, and with, you know, the housing market is craziness. You know, you have to start thinking about, okay, where can I get essentially free money from and still be able to do the things that I want to do. So I say that again, it was a selfish plug, guys, but you know, the military, it's been great for me. And I have a podcast. I'm sure some of you thinking to yourself, like, when does this guy find time? I'm a dad. I was in school. I'm not in school currently because I finished my bachelor's. I'm waiting to start my master's. A podcast, senior leader in the military. So like, I have all these things, I'm doing all these things. And I'm doing a lot of this podcast, especially, is I'm doing what I love. So like, I find the time, I make the time for my family, and it's possible. Is you just have to want it. And that's that drive that you have to have that drive to want to do these things, for them to be successful. And that's 100%. Just really short and skinny of all these things. And so it's a big deal, but
100%.
Anyway.
And there's so many perks later in life too, with the military. I mean, at any time, maybe you don't go and maybe you serve and then maybe you get your degree when you're in your 30s. Guess what? The GI Bill's still there. And then there's also benefits when it comes to buying a home, military discount, things like this. So there's so many great perks of the military. I think it's such a great path for kids. I think it's just such a great path to explore, to try. I mean, it's only 4 years. So if you go and serve that 4 years because you don't want to go to school or your kid's undecided on school, guess what? Go and serve 4 years, serve your country. If you love this country and you're healthy and you're able, like, go and serve. You know, there's no reason to not go and serve. I mean, you're 18. Yeah. You still have your whole life. The likelihood that you get deployed into a combat zone, unless you go and enlist during a world conflict, which, I mean, if you're 17, turning 18 soon, and you're listening to this podcast, I mean, definitely take that into consideration too, because you could be deploying, God knows where in the next few years. Taiwan, you know, Middle East, you know, Russia, Ukraine, like Venezuela, like you could be deploying somewhere in the world that has a major world conflict going on. So the likelihood is only increasing on the horizon. But if you turn 18 in the next four years and you're listening to this podcast, like, congrats, like, you're amazing, first and foremost. But second off, of course, you know, if you have kids this age as well, it's a conversation to have. Your kids need to know all of their options. And you need to be supportive of all these options, and you need to show them the different things like that. If you want to know more about the military and stuff, guess what? You're listening to this podcast. Q's a great resource. If you want to know more about the mental health field, message me. I'll message you anytime, any day, whatever kind of thing. So if you need to have these conversations, use your network people, find people who you can contact. Join the Bluey Dads group on Facebook and say, hey, my 16-year-old wants to explore the following careers. Who here works in plumbing, is a nurse or doctor, a lawyer, and I don't know, a business person that owns a business. 40 people will comment, say, oh, I'm this. We'd love to talk to your kid, tell them more about what I do, yada, yada, yada. I mean, because we don't do that anymore. Like, we don't get to go into our kids' school. We don't have like a career day, which I thought would be super fun. Something I always look forward to as a dad, but then my kids got to school and they don't do that anymore. It's like, that's a bunch of bullshit. Because I would love to do that. And that would have been so fun to go and A, embarrass my daughter, and B, to tell these kids about mental health and to encourage them to be healthy and work on their mental health and things like that. It would have been so cool.
I think I love that, right? Like being able to really just, tell kids about what the workforce actually looks like, right? And understand, parents, you understand this more than your kids will when I say this. Life isn't about just choosing a job, sticking to it for X amount of time until you can retire or whatever the case might be, right? But that's not what life is, right? I will say, and I want to stress this enough, right? Parents, this, young adolescents who are turning 18, 19 years old are young. If you're listening to this is not to tell you that you need to, figure out what your life looks like tomorrow, and you better be right, and you have to stick with it. No, it's just to kind of lay it out for you. It's like you'll need to work, right? You'll need to work if you want to eat. You have to work, and like it sounds morbid, and I hope your parents are teaching you this, but like the world is unforgiving. And, as much as I would like, love for every kid to take a year sabbatical to go travel the world and come back with a newfound idea of themselves and then really say, hey, I'm going to go to college to be a lawyer. And then I'm going to go try to work in the embassy, and I'm going to become work in NATO. Like as much as I would love for that to be your reality, unfortunately, that is not. We don't have the luxury of free money. We don't have the luxury of time. And we don't have the luxury of allowing you to potentially fail and then not recover, right? And as parents, it's 100%. One of our biggest fears is our kids failing and then not, and it's a failure where it's unrecoverable, meaning that you may see a way out for them, but they don't see a way out for themselves. And we want to protect our kids, but we also want to nudge our kids out to the world to say, hey, this is this you have to experience this, or you won't understand or believe me when I tell you that the world is unforgiving. You won't. They really won't. They will look like we're crazy old people, even though we're not that much older. We're not that old, and they'll be like, you don't know what you're talking about. And then they go experience it, and then in a roundabout way, they call you, tell you they love you, and say, wow, you were totally right on this. And they just gloss over it like, like it didn't mean anything. And then it was no big deal, but even though it was a major part of their life. I'm speaking from experience, people. I called my dad and I called my mom, and I kind of, in a roundabout way, told them that they were right. And then I quickly moved on to a different subject because I didn't want to live in that
real
time.
quick. We got to move on to that real quick.
I didn't want to live in
and
that reality.
I just want to touch on that too. Like if let's say there's a young father out there that's listening to this podcast that's working a dead ass job, that's making minimum wage, barely able to feed his kid, put diapers on their ass or whatever. Guess what? You literally have two options if you want to have something sustainable and you want to give your kid a good life. Two options. If you are really young, 18, 19, 20 years old, whatever, right? Trades are a great option. They're going to start you out paying well. They're going to train you. Most unions and most places that have a trade, like here where I live, there's a trade school right up the road from us for electricians specifically that's funded by the union. So you start off getting paid and you're learning a trade at the same time. You're going to make way more there than that. And it's going to be a career, something you can do for a long time. You and electricians, they get paid really well. You get benefits. So health, vision, dental, kid gets taken care of, all those things like that. Don't be reliant on the government because that's where you're at right now. You're reliant on the government, Medicaid, Medicare, things like that. There's nothing wrong with that. WIC, things like that. Food stamps. But you don't want to live that life forever. You don't want your kid to live that life forever. You don't want to live in low-income housing forever. You want to give them better that you had. So That's one option. Your other option, go enlist. I think there's really two options in that scenario. Go enlist. And of course, there's going to be exceptions to that. But, go enlist. Go and join the National Guard. You're going to get benefits, health, vision, dental, medical. Military is going to take care of you. You're going to take care of your family. You're going to take care of that young mother as well. You're going to get out of that life that you're living. Maybe you'll get to travel too, get stationed at different bases, things like that. You'll be housed. You'll get paid well. Travel will be covered, things like that. You'll get to have different experiences. So I really think there's two options when it comes to that. I think both are great options. There's nothing wrong with either of them, but you have to make that choice and you have to make it sooner than later or you're going to regret it. So,
yeah. Don't live to regret not making a decision that you are too hesitant to make, right? And if you make it and it's not where you're supposed to be, it's no problem. Like I literally tell y'all, 4 years goes by fast. I mean, I'm telling you guys, I've been in the military for going on 11 years, and let me tell you, it's like a blink, and it's like boom, 11 years. Not literally like blink, but like it's like a slow blink, but like it's been like it's all happened so fast. It's amazing how time flies, and you're just like, holy crap. One moment I'm telling people I'm only going to do 4 years. I'm only going to do 4 years. And then I was like, I got one more contract and I'm done. And next thing I know, I'm at 11 years. The current contract will put me at 14. And
so you just renewed then? You just renewed within the last year or so?
It was January of 2022. I did sign 6 years. And so that puts me at January of 2028, which will put me at just 14 years and like 2 months. So
that's amazing.
I'm probably more likely going to still retire as long as that's God's plan for me to stay in and retire from the military. But we'll see what that looks like.
Well, couldn't you stay in too at the same time? Like, isn't there an option for you to stay in and just like be listed as reservists and just attend those monthly trainings or however that looks? I'm not sure. I had a buddy that I worked with Lowe's at. He was in the reservists, so he just had to go monthly or maybe it was every couple months. I don't remember. Because different units,
they could do either or. They could do either or. Yeah. So you could do monthly or every other month, but instead of 2 days, it's 4 days if you do every other month. So
yeah, I think he did monthly because it was a great reason to not be scheduled for work. But
yeah.
So yeah, and these things are going to be honored too. You know, if you're in the reservist and you say, hey, I got to go to my monthly training, guess what? Your workplace can't say no.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So you're protected status as well, which is really great too. But of course, like you said, that's going to be a choice, that between you and God and between you and your wife and your family too. What's going to be best for you guys at that time? You don't know what the road's going to look like here in 4 years.
Yeah.
Heck, who knows if we'll even have a country in 4 years? I hope and pray that we will. We should. Oh, God, I hope we do. But, it could look very different. Who knows what could happen in the next 6 years, where you're going to be in the next 6 years or the next 4 years of this contract that you're at right now. Who knows where you're going to end up? Who knows what you're going to go and do? Only God. But, there's a time and a place and a reason. So,
absolutely. Well, I wanted to, I love the military conversation, but we're going to shift gears again. And it's how my mind works. I was asking questions and we kind of followed that. But the second thing that I wanted to hit on when you mentioned, when you were doing your introduction, it was, you said you didn't talk to your dad until you were in high school?
Yeah. So, okay. So some backstory here. So I was given to my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, when I was 2 weeks old. And so at 2 weeks, I lived with her until I was 13 years old. I had very little contact with my biological mother and my dad. I only refer to my biological mother as such. I refer to my dad as my dad, my homie, Pops. Great man. Love the man to death. Couldn't say enough amazing things about my dad. So there's a big difference there. Different story. I have a deadbeat mom and I have an amazing, amazing dad. Absolutely amazing, incredible dad. Love you, Dad. Shout out to you. Don't know if he'll listen to this, but who knows? So let's see. So yeah, I was raised by her from 2 weeks till I was about 13 years old. And then I went and lived in Hawaii after that for about 2 years with my maternal grandfather and my step grandmother. There, after some things had happened, it was what was needed at the time. I'm not going to get into that. So please don't follow up questions on that.
Gotcha.
And so then went there, lived there. At this time, this is when I really started to get curious. I mean, I'm 13, 14 years old. I'm really curious about who the hell am I? Where the hell do I come from? I've been told all these things about my dad my entire life. I've been told all these things about my biological mom my entire life. I've seen those things from my biological mom my entire life. Those make sense, but there's this other side that just didn't make sense because I never seen those things to match what I'd been told. I've been told varying things from different people. And so then I finally decided to reach out on my own. My grandparents supported me. I lived in Hawaii. And so then reached out, started talking. I'm pretty sure I cussed him out. I got after him, said all the things. His response was to send 14-year-old me the copy of the court papers, all the court documents from the custody hearing. And I found a lot of things in there that I was unaware of, that I didn't know about. A lot of time that I was supposed to be spending with him that I didn't. A lot of birthday cards that were returned to sender. A lot of letters that were returned to sender. A lot of invitations to go on trips, have experiences, things like that. Never got answered. So nothing against my grandma. She did the best she could. She didn't expect to be raising a grandchild. At 40, when she was in her 40s, right? She had her children. Her kids were having kids. she didn't want to have no more kids, raise
Yeah.
nobody. So bless her heart for taking me in, and raising me. She did an amazing job. So nothing against her. There was a lot of anger, a lot of resentment there, towards her after I found out all this. But over time, we talk, we make amends, and we move forward. Um, we offer forgiveness to each other. And so my dad ended up coming out to Hawaii with him, my stepmom, my older sister, and my 3 younger brothers, my stepbrother, and my 2 younger half brothers. And we had a great time, a great week together, a lot of fun. A lot of good memories were made. And then probably a few months later, I ended up flying to go see him in Oakland, California, and then never returned. Never went back to Hawaii. Had my stuff packed up, sent up to me. And then spent the rest of the summer there, got enrolled in school in the fall, and then went to the rest of high school for the next 3.5 years in Oakland. So that was a lot of fun. So shout out to the Bay. I'm a Bay Area native. I really claim Oakland as my second home. My main home, first home is in Seattle, South Seattle, and then my second home is going to be Oakland through and through. So yeah, love Oakland. So yeah, and then ever since that, moving in with him and getting to know him over the years, all the different things that we've experienced. I mean, I lost my younger brother 5 years ago to overdose, and so we both went through that together. So my dad and I are super close, ups and downs and things like that. And so, yeah, my dad and I have a great relationship now. Super fun. Yeah.
So, and if any time I ask a question, don't answer, totally cool, totally okay. But with something you said, you said you cussed your dad out. So what was that like? Obviously I understand angry and like,
I mean,
it's
like 13, 14 years old. It was through Messenger. So of course I could say whatever I wanted, things like that. We laugh about it now.
That's awesome.
If you go back and listen to episode 100 of the Young Dad podcast, that's when I had him on. We broke down the story. We went into the story. It was a lot of fun. We laughed. We got into it, talked a lot of shit about each other. And so we had a good time. So
that's awesome. I mean, it's amazing that you're able to laugh about it now. And, based off what you said, like it's so unfortunate that that's the reality for so many young kids that are growing up right now, especially young men who really need their dad in their life. When you reach a certain age, right? You need that for young men. They need that male influence as a almost similar to like on a compass, right? You have your magnetic north, and it's so important, right? Because your compass, and I won't get into the breakdown of a compass, but y'all understand my metaphor here, okay? My analogy, right?
Yeah, compass north, never eat soggy waffles, so never. Yeah.
Oh man. And but it's so important, right? Like what our dad, the impact that great dads have, right? Like it's not every single dad, but it's great. I'm talking like great dads. And a great dad is a dad that's present, that's there, that present, that shows up to your games when he can, that gives you advice, that shares his wisdom, that stands there late at night even though he's tired, and you say, Dad, I just need you to watch me do some sprints, or I need you to watch. Can you come shoot some hoops with me? Or, hey, Dad, can you show me how to do this? Hey, Dad, can you help me fix my car? Can you show me? Just a dad who's like, yeah, I got you. Let me help you. I want to help you. I want to guide you. I want to mentor you. I want to lead you. I want you to be successful. And a lot of these lessons that I've learned from my dad, and I'm sure that you've learned from your dad, it was sit down, let me teach you. It was inadvertently something happened and your dad, and it was like, hey, come with me. And next thing you know, you're just kind of following your dad, like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then you're just, next thing you know, you're doing something. And then a couple years later, you're doing something and someone's like, man, my freaking sink broke. I don't know. I'm trying to fix it. And you're like, that's easy. And you do it because you just watched and you learned from your dad, one, not holding the flashlight in the right place, but still you learned.
I think for me, it was a bit different though. Like I came into a situation where I was the oldest boy.
Oh, wow.
And my dad didn't know how to raise his oldest boy, because he hadn't had one. He had my older sister, but she spent most of her life with her mom and whatnot. She lived with my dad at this time. So it was me and then my stepbrother, who's 3 months younger than me. Very different. We're very different. And then of course my 2 younger brothers too. And so it was super different. But the biggest thing that I can say for my dad is that I wouldn't be nearly as successful if it wasn't for him. And for other male role models I had at the same time in my life, as a teenager, going through adolescence and things like that. Like, I would not be nearly as successful or healthy or happy or anything like that if it wasn't for my dad saying, hey, come visit. If you like it, stay. We'll figure it out, kind of thing. And then after that, just supporting me, whatever I wanted to do, it was like, okay, cool. Whatever you decide to do, though. The biggest thing was like, if you decide to do it, you're committing to that thing, and you're going to go. Even if you hate it, even if you don't want to go. If you're playing on the basketball team, you're going to go to every single practice. No ifs, ands, or buts. And you're going to go to school every day. If you got to sign up for this thing, then you're going to go. I'll get you there, and we'll figure it out, and we'll do that part of it. But no matter what, you show up, you do it. You're not going to give up on anything. So there was never an option to give up. But then there was always so much like trust and autonomy at the same time, to where, of course, I messed up. I was a teenager, and were times I didn't tell my dad where I was or what I was doing or who I was hanging out with or when I was coming home, things like that. So I got some mean phone calls, some mean texts. Where the F are you? What the hell are you doing? Of course, naturally, because it's my dad. He wants to know where I'm at. He wants to make sure I'm safe. He wants to make sure I'm alive. First and foremost, if it's 8:00 at night and he hasn't heard from me since 2:00 or earlier in the morning when he took me to school or took me in my before school, whatever, then that's going to create some worry. It's going to be like, wonder where he's at, kind of thing. What is he doing? Then I'll get the phone calls.
Oakland, California, especially. Yeah, let me tell you. If you ain't never been to Oakland, look, I'm not going to disparage Oakland. I'm not.
No,
I will just say
really not. It's
Oakland,
really not that bad. It's really not. It gets a bad name.
I've been to Oakland. My mom's family's from Riverside, so like I've been to Oakland. I've been, I'm very familiar with the
state
you don't
of California.
To. Yeah, well, there's a part you don't go to a Riverside as well. So like, that's anywhere.
Oakland's not like it was. Oakland's not like it was more than a decade ago when I was a teenager growing up. It's not the same. More than 10 years ago. At this point, wow, I'm old.
You said you said 10 years ago, and I was like, I don't think we're the same age, but I'm gonna let you have it.
No, it was more than 10 years ago, because you're 29, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm 29. And so,
you're 29? Okay.
Yeah. And so thinking back like 10 years ago, like, it's not the same. Like, the videos I see on Twitter, on Twix, whatever you want to call it. I like to call it Twix, but the videos I see of Oakland are not the same. Seeing that Walmart is no longer there, in and out, gone. Businesses are out of Oakland. The A's, the Raiders, the Warriors are all gone from Oakland. It's homeless encampments lining up streets. Like, it's not what it was. It's a terrible thing to happen to such a great, beautiful city that I grew up in. That was just fun. Of course, you're a kid, you're a teenager, you don't worry about the stuff. But I mean, I only got a knife pointed at me a couple times while waiting for the bus. As a teenager that I can remember. Luckily, I was right outside one of the times I was right outside the suit rental place, the tuxedo rental place. Yeah. That rented to all the high school kids, and I waited there every day. The guys were super cool. And it happened to me, and I knew I could go right up in there and do this, because this crazy lady was tapping the bench with a knife. Oh. And I looked, and I seen it, and I was scared shitless. I was like, what the heck? And so I just calmly walk away. I'm like, okay, thanks. But what my dad always taught me, like with homeless people, was like, they're just people. Like, they're just homeless. They're just down on their luck right now. You still got to be kind to them. They're no different. That could be you. Could be us. Alternative events, it could be us. Kind of thing. And so there's some really important life lessons. My dad gave me a lot of autonomy. I got way off track there, but he gave me a lot of autonomy. Check in, do what you got to do, keep your grades up, and not having that pressure, because I put enough of that pressure on myself, and not having that added like parental pressure to like do well, because he knew and trusted that I was going to do well, made me do even better. Like, graduated 4.0, top of my class.
That's awesome.
And just was super successful. I had great friends. I had really good relationship, things like that. So it was overall just a really great experience. And life would look a lot different if it wasn't for my dad. I'll just say that much. Taught me a lot of things. Taught me to be kind to all people. Yeah. Like, all people deserve kindness. Just because they're homeless or they're sitting outside or they're cracked out on the street or whatever, they still deserve kindness. They still deserve to be treated. I don't remember how many times where we would be walking home from a restaurant close by, and I would have leftovers in my hand, and we'd pass a homeless guy, and my dad would be, give your food to him. He's like, we got more food at the house. Give him your food. You don't need it. You're not going to eat it anyway. Give it to him. Oh, okay. Give a homeless guy chicken wings or pizza or whatever we went and got. Or he's like, hey, I'm going to give you a couple extra bucks. Get that dude that's always outside the corner store a drink and a honey bun or something while you're there.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So just showing me like how to be kind to those people, has led me to want to do a lot of those same things. Like when I see an opportunity to do so. Most recent one I think was, there's always opportunities to be kind. Maybe I'm just missing them because I'm not praying hard enough for and looking for them. But we were getting pizza before we were going to go boating one day over the summer, and I saw this homeless guy outside. He looked super hungry and whatnot, and we were getting some Little Caesars, and I just went back in and got an extra bag of crazy bread and gave him a bag, and he was so grateful, and he was happy. And then we pulled away, and just a look on his face, he was just so happy getting to eat some warm bread, and just totally different demeanor, when we take care of each other. And it's really important to take care of each other. So
it is. I love it, right? And that's what I was talking about, right? Like that these lessons that it wasn't a sit down. I'm going to use this whiteboard or this to explain to you how to be kind or what that it was. I'm going to show you by being the example, and I'm going to be the example once, twice, whatever the case might be, or multiple times, right? But then also I'm going to expect you to follow suit with, okay, my dad told me to buy this man a honey bun and a freaking water inside. I bought it, handed it to him, and that man or woman is grateful for it, right? Because truthfully, like you said, there are people. Now, don't get me wrong, guys, there are evil people out there, and they are the ones who are less fortunate. But not every single person is evil out there. Not every single person is, right? And it's unfortunate that there are evil people out there, but that doesn't mean that you don't still have a heart or a care to want to help people. I think that's one of the biggest things, is always just at least wanting to try to help people, because what you said, your dad said it to you is perfect. It's like, that could be us, right? We could be down on our luck one day, and that could be us. And we would want someone to help us, but how would it feel if they looked at us and said, yeah, nope, you're probably dangerous or whatever, or you're this, you're that. And reality is, it's like, no, I'm not. If you just give me, I just need $2 more and I could go buy that Little Caesars pizza tonight for me and my family, and we have dinner, right? You know what I mean? Or something simple, something as small as that, as small as it may be.
Yeah.
So, but it's beautiful. And so I love your story and how you mentioned your dad, because it's crazy to me, because how you were able to, you're like, hey, I went to Oakland and I never went back to Hawaii, and then boom, it's created that you guys were able to create this and form this relationship to where you are now. So my final question before we wrap it up here is going to be and personal question, but it's important to me. When was the first time that you said, I love you, Dad?
Oh gosh.
And maybe it's not those exact words, but something to that, like telling your dad that you love him.
Trying to think. So that's something my dad and I have always struggled with. More so my dad than me.
Mm-hmm.
To the point to where, trying to think, it's probably just like joking, things like that. Probably had to be like 15, 16 years old or something. But it makes them really uncomfortable. When it comes from me, when it comes from my daughters, it's, oh, I love you too, kind of thing like that. And I'm just like, what the he did it just a couple weeks ago when he was here. My youngest daughter goes, I love you, Pops. And he goes, oh, I love you too. And I'm like, is that easy for you? Is that easy? I'm like, excuse me? Can I get some of that? But grandpas with their grandkids, especially their granddaughters, different than with their sons.
Yeah.
And I think my dad really struggled with it too, because he didn't have his dad growing up. Not to try to psychoanalyze my dad, but my paternal grandfather passed away when my dad was really, really, really young.
Oh, wow.
He had a pretty shitty stepdad. May he rest in peace. But from, my experience with him was okay, but my dad's experience with him was completely different. It's like comparing apples to oranges. I can't compare the two.
Yeah.
Because it was different. I had limited interactions with him. He was raised by him, so completely different. So can't compare the two. But, I probably had to be like 15 or 16. I don't remember what it was. I think it was probably just like joking. My stepmom was joking with him, and all of his boys were like, oh, we love you, Dad. Grumbles it off kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Still does. still does rumble it off, but he's gotten a lot better at receiving it and reciprocating it over the years. I've noticed too. So
yeah, that's and you work in mental health, so you know and understand this better than me. But I will say, it's one of those things where they may struggle, and there's still probably those scars there from their own childhood to even
Absolutely.
now. But one of the beautiful things about your story in particular, or your experience in particular, is when that time comes and he looks at you and he's able to say, "Hey, I love you," and I know you know this because it's your life, right? But
yeah,
it's amazing because it was like, it's almost like you're hearing for the first time they've forgiven themselves. And I'll give you all a personal example, not to psychoanalyze you as if I know it, all knowing that I live in your head or live in your life. I was, and this is my final story, I promise. So me and my twin brother, we were adopted since the age of 2, and we grew up, we were raised by an all-white family. That is my family. That's my mom, my dad, my brothers, my sisters. Our sister, I only have one sister, I'm sorry. And, it was always weird or always hard for me to tell my dad that I love him, even though he's like, "I love you so much." And I'm like, "How do you love me? Like, I'm not even really yours." You know what I mean? Like in my head, this is what I'm saying. I'm not really yours. How could you really love me? And then it wasn't until, I would say it, but I was kind of like, just to say it, but like, did I really mean it? I don't know. But and I knew it made him happy to hear that when I said that I love him. When I really meant, for truly meaning it for the first time, to say, "No, I have no problem saying I love you," was I joined the military, went to basic training, did my graduation, and they leave, and I got to go from basic to go to advanced individual training, which is, depending what you're doing, it's a little bit longer, whatever the time. I still really mean it then, but it wasn't until my first duty station, which is it was Fort Hood, Texas, which is now Fort Cavazos, which is in Killeen, Texas, 2 hours from here. My dad, who's a pilot, was out of San Antonio, so he bought me a car before I got here. So I landed in San Antonio and jumped in the car that he had bought me. It wasn't a great car, but it's still a car nonetheless. And he drove his car. He drove me to Fort Hood. We stopped at this burger joint. Stopped before I was going to go on to base for the first time and kind of basically figure out what my life was going to be like in really joining the military as my first duty station. And it was sitting there in the restaurant. And look, I'm just going to be honest with y'all. Those who are close to me, they know I don't cry. Crying is not like a thing that I do. I just don't have any tears to give. I'm sorry. But there's been 2 major points in my life where I have cried, where I'm just like, this is just, or not. It's been more than that. But anyway, it's major impact in my life. And so he was getting ready to leave, and I could tell things were coming to an end. We had finished our food, and it was kind of like, all right, hey, this is it. And I start crying because I am like, it's like it's the realization has set in. I am becoming a man, officially becoming a man, and I'm on my own. Everything that happens from this point on is on me. I no longer have that fallback of my parents and do it, just like, hey, quitting, say, I can't do this anymore, I'm gonna go be with y'all, right? I don't have that. I joined the military, I signed a contract, I'm there. And so I'm crying, and he's like, and tell people all the time, he's the only one that can call me Quani. He's like, Quani, wait, hey, listen, calm down. It's all right. Listen, gives me a hug. He goes, hey, listen, you don't need to. He's like, he knows, he could tell that I'm scared, and like, I don't know what to expect, right? Because at the same time, I've already been told that I'm probably going to be deploying to Afghanistan. And so like, all of this thing is making me nervous. 19-year-old Quan is just like, I don't know what to feel. I don't know this is just all scary and all just overwhelming. And he goes, hey, don't worry. I'm still here. You can always call me. You can always talk. And it cried, but it made me feel good. And when he was leaving, he was like, hey, I love you. Don't worry about it. And I said, I love you back. But that was really the first time for me where I was really saying, no, I love my dad. And it meant the world to me. Wrong way of saying, guys, dads are so important. They're like, they literally, it's amazing the impact that dads have on children's lives and growing and help raising these kids. And it's beautiful because that father-son and father-daughter relationship is an amazing thing. It's not to take away from that mother-son, that mother-daughter relationship. But as me being a male, being a guy, being a father, being a dad, I'm telling you, to my other dads, to my young dads, shout out to you, and to my, to my seasoned dads, if you will, hey, it's amazing to be a dad. It's a beautiful, and I highly encourage all of you, when the time comes for you to be a dad, take it serious. And that's ultimately where I'll summarize here, where mediocre dads comes full circle, guys. Where being mediocre is a choice, and you have to refuse to be mediocre every single day. Before we go, Jay, where can people find you? Where can they find podcasts, the show? What you guys got going on? Where can we find you?
Of course. And just a closing thought here. I do just want to shout out my dad for how much growth that's happened with him over the years that I've seen. From going to when I first told him he was going to be a grandpa, said, what the F? Why the F are you having all this stuff? I mean, granted, I was like 21. I was super young. To the point to where now he comes and visits his granddaughters and they climb all over him. They look up at him and they just admire him. And he's fully reciprocating their love and their energy and everything. And I'm just so beyond proud of him and just amazed at him. And he's such a good guy, such a good man, such a good example. He's such a great dad, grandfather, business owner. So shout out to my dad. He has really refused to be mediocre over the years by excelling in being a general contractor, a realtor. He knows no quit. He knows no end. He will keep trying and keep going and keep going and keep going no matter how rough things get, no matter what life throws at him. And he's just a great example of that resilience. That it means to not be mediocre, to be the best that you possibly can be, to always do the best, to set big, audacious goals. I'm going to do 2 million, 3 million, 4 million this year kind of thing, and projects and things like that, to where he sets these big, lofty goals and expectations. Does it always meet him? No. But does that stop him from making an even bigger goal the next year? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
He figures it out. He makes adjustments along the way. So, it's just really cool to see. Really important message. We got to adjust as we go. We can shoulda, coulda, woulda, but we need to adjust as we go. We have to make those adjustments. So, and you can adjust your way over to youngdadpod.com, where you can find all the things Young Dad Pod, youngdadpod.com. That's YOUNGDADPOD.com. And that's where you can find all the things Young Dad Pod. That's the best possible landing space, outside of socials. Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Threads, Twix, sorry. So all the meta properties, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, YouTube, Rumble, everywhere you get your podcast, Young Dad Pod. It's that easy to find the podcast at Young Dad Pod on all social medias, on all platforms. It's a super great, easy, quick, convenient thing that you can do there. If you search Young Dad Pod on Google or Young Dad Podcast on Google, I actually did this with the AI feature. It brings up Young Dad Podcast and it tells you about the podcast. Really cool thing. I never thought that would happen. So it's really cool to see.
That's awesome.
According to listener notes, we're a top 1% podcast in the world. So that's really cool. So you're definitely getting some great content there. We have awesome new projects coming up that are coming out, next week. The very first episode of Patriarchy Principles will be live next Wednesday, October, whatever day, 2nd. I think it is October 2nd. Yes.
October 2nd.
First is on Tuesday. So October 1st, October 2nd. Really excited for that launch. I really hope it helps capture just that audience that needs a little bit more information to maybe sway their vote, to decide their vote, and help them understand how important voting is, how you can take action as a father to better protect your family, better inform yourself as well. So really excited about Patriarchy Principles, really excited about Biracial Broadcast that's coming out. Hopefully the next episode of that is next Friday. That'll probably be a little bit more sporadic, because that's just how me and my dad are. We're a little bit more sporadic when it comes to trying to nail down a recording. He doesn't look at his phone, I don't look at my phone, and then we can never line up. Something comes up for him, something comes up for me, or he's sleeping. He's old. So whatever. No, we're literally 21 years apart. So,
oh wow,
22 years apart. We're really not that far apart at all. We're 22 years apart. 21. Yeah, because me and my daughter are barely over 22, 21 in a few months, and then me and him are 21, him and his mom are 21, so it's like this weird 21 thing. Hope and pray that my daughter doesn't have kids at 21, but
yes.
If she does, great. Good for her. I love her just the same. I love those grandkids just the same. But anyways, Young Dad Pod on all socials. On the website, you can find all the things. Patreon, Pinterest, all the social links are there too. You can find the resources, full episode, blog, all the things. So yeah, really appreciate you having me. Really appreciate us getting to have another conversation after our conversation. And just for what you're doing over here at Mediocre Dads. Yes, you flattered me, but same back to you. I think it's so important to talk about military service. So important to talk about your experience. Because there's a lot of dads who need to have that conversation with their kids about the military or about being in the military and having these conversations with themselves to have bigger conversations later down the road. So everything that you and I are both doing is very important for a lot of men out there. So we'll keep finding that good fight, you know?
Absolutely. I appreciate it. And listen, you are always more than welcome to come back to the show because you're such a phenomenal guest, and very few guests that I talk to that I allow to go over an hour. I'm not going to lie, guys. There's only a few because the conversation is usually great that I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, we're going over an hour. This is a great conversation. But all jokes aside, for real, thank you for coming on. And you are always more than welcome to be a guest on the show again. I love talking to you, and it's
I'm not
going to
cancel my other booking then because I didn't do that on purpose. Totally. AM and PM's hard, okay, Q. AM and PM is hard. It's difficult. And by the time you edit all this up and you put the magic audio and all the AI producer stuff on this one, things like that, and you clean it up, it'll be barely over an hour, so people won't even know.
Yeah, they won't even know. They'll be like, "Oh, what do you mean?"
And they'll be so enthralled. They'll be enthralled in the conversation. They won't even notice.
Absolutely.
So
it's beautiful. But absolutely. Hey, thanks for coming on. Hey, guys, like I said, thanks for joining us on the Mediocre Dads podcast. And listen, guys, as I always say, being mediocre is a choice. You have to refuse to be mediocre. That's all I got for you guys. Mediocre Dads out.